So I think we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And I am working on pulling up an agenda, and I will ask Danielle if you are able to read our mission and vision.
Yes, I tried to find an agenda.
Okay, and then I'll share with the screen after.
The mission is to offer advice to the St. Albans Police Department for the successful implementation of the 21st century policing strategies and to assist the police department in following the established roadmap as amended by the City Council.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to try to share my screen. Maybe. What did my Zoom go? So stay with me for just another, oh. Cool. Okay. I don't know who the host is. Okay, so maybe I'm not going to share my screen, which is super problematic. Yeah, the city has screen share disabled, so we're signed in as not the city, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. I might have to be creative with how I do this. So for those of you in the room, I may minimize and try to backdoor into my Google accounts to get it. But we have some other things on the agenda, so we will go without having the agenda on the screen, and I appreciate everybody's patience with that. But hopefully you all had a chance to review the agenda. I believe it was warned. Does anybody have, anyone from the board have any questions or comments on the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Does anyone from the public have any questions or comments on our agenda? Okay, excellent. So moving right along. Oh, I guess I did that in the wrong order. You did the mission review early. Thank you. Sorry, we skipped order. I apologize. I would like to. These are the minutes.
Yeah, those are minutes.
No wonder. Okay. So I would like to consider approving September's meeting minutes. They were in the packet. I will note that I think after we approve that, I will take a minute and have us all go around and introduce ourselves for the minute taker. Because I know that names were a little bit of a challenge in the minutes when I reviewed them. I was able to fix them, but just looking for any questions, concerns. John, you can throw it in the chat, or any suggested changes to those minutes.
I would make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
A second.
Any further discussion on the minutes from September? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
John, raise your hand. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to welcome our new member. Marcus Niebar is here with us today, and we know it was a little bit of a journey for you to get approved and get on the committee, but we're very glad that you're here. And so I'm hoping that both for the benefit of Marcus and for the folks doing minutes for us, that we can go around and introduce ourselves, and we will start with you, Marcus.
So I'm Marcus Niebar. I am a happy new member to the board here, and I've had the opportunity to work in the community a little bit here, and I appreciate the community feel that I get from the police department. I actually just talked to a colleague about that before I left work, so.
Excellent, thank you. Chief.
Morrison Moth, the chief of the St. Albans Police Department. Been doing this job for a very long time, but the city PD only for about 2.5 years.
I'm Ben Kaufman. I'm the program director at Samaritan House here in St. Albans. And, was invited to speak a little bit about our shelter and our relationship with SAPD.
Great, thank you.
Chris Lukens, I'm a community member and also Director of Voices Against Violence.
Thank you, Chris. I'm Jamie Pinkham, and I'm the chair of the Police Advisory Committee, and I've been doing that for about almost 6 months, I guess. And not present with us tonight is Melinda White, who is the co-chair, and her and I have swapped over the 2 years that we've been doing this. I'm happy to be here.
I'm Danielle Emily Mitchell, and I am not a resident of St. Albans, but I work in St. Albans, and I'm the director of the Children, Youth, and Family Services Division out of Northwestern Counseling, and so I have a lot of working relationships with the police department.
Excellent. Folks on the screen, we'll go to you. Maybe? Sorry. Okay, John, maybe, did you drop it in the chat? Sorry, I guess we started with. Okay, that's Winnie Wilkinson, who typed in the chat. I don't know if she has audio either. John Nichols, thank you, John. Everyone here is an original member, other than Marcus. Good stuff. And we'll go ahead and do it since we're here. And we have one guest from the community who sort of started to introduce himself, but Mr. Lavoie, would you like to introduce yourself for the record?
Hi, I'm John Lavoie. I'm the Franklin County State's Attorney.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, were you able to get everything you needed? Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you everybody for entertaining some introductions for us. So we will go ahead and move on to the discussion with Ben, our special guest, so we can have him speak, and then he is welcome to leave as needed. Ben, I'm just going to give you a heads up. I am going to be trying to fiddle around with this while you're doing that, but I will be listening. So by all means, please go ahead and introduce yourself, which you already did, I guess. So you can start with the Samaritan House and what brings you to the PAB tonight.
Great, thank you. I know some of you, not all of you. My name is Ben Kaufman. Lifelong St. Albans resident between the town and the city. And I've worked at Samaritan House for about 4 years, took over as the program director this April, ahead of our merge with the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, CVOEO. We've had a lot of changes there. Just for those who don't know, this isn't a change, but Samaritan House operates Tim's House. So Samaritan House is the organization. We provide a lot of housing-related services, housing support, and we operate Tim's House Shelter. So sometimes that can get a little confusing, the distinction between the two, but when you drive by Tim's House, you're driving by Samaritan House. I had reached out actually to Melinda, curious about maybe just setting up a meeting with the chief here, just because we haven't had one, and we utilize our relationship with SAPD quite frequently. We consider them a really important partner here, and she suggested that this forum might be really appropriate way to do that and to share with this whole board and with the community at large, just what our relationship is with SAPD, what value that has, and just to inform a little bit more about what we do at Samaritan House and Tim's House. I mentioned some changes, and one that's come about in the last few months for us. Tim's House was traditionally a family shelter, so it served families and adults. What we started noticing in the last few years was an alarming high number of people experiencing homelessness who were single adults. And that is not to say that there's not an issue of families experiencing homelessness, because there is. So we were trying to kind of serve both, and we felt that was a poor practice. We had 15 to 20 people in crisis all living under one roof, and some of those people were young children, and we felt that wasn't really the best way to do things. It wasn't the best for our guests, who were adults, and it certainly wasn't the best thing for the children. So we've made some moves in the last year, and we are now only serving in shelter single adults. We do still provide case management services to families, whether they're sheltered in hotels or at imminent risk of homelessness. But in Tim's House Shelter, it is all now just single adults. With that, we've been able to reduce our barriers for what lets someone into shelter. We had to be a lot more strict when there were children around about what criteria somebody had to fit in to be in the shelter. And we've been able to lessen that so that we've been able to take more people than ever. We have very, very limited criteria. If you're experiencing homelessness in this area, we will take you in with just a few exceptions. what we found in the last few months as we've gotten into that is that our old model that was based around working with families and larger households is not working the same way for 20 single adults in crisis. And for instance, we used to only have one staff member on duty at a time in the evening, maximum, sometimes not even one person on site, just someone on call. That is no longer sufficient for us. As you know, it's a challenge to hire folks, and we've been extremely short-staffed anyway. And we're noticing, as could be expected, an uptick in guests who are either experiencing a mental health crisis, a crisis around some sort of substance that leads to potentially dangerous behavior. The last few weeks have been exceptionally rough for us. We had a staff member assaulted a couple of weeks ago, rather violently, which is the first time that's happened in my 4 years there. I don't know about prior to that. We saw an overdose in shelter, which was the first in my 4 years there. Those two events happened 24 hours apart. We also had to contact SAPD just to remove an unruly guest. And it's not to say that we haven't had to call SAPD from time to time, but we have noticed it quite a bit more recently, especially with our lack of staff. We just don't have enough folks. We've had open positions for a long time, and in the last couple of weeks we've had one out injured. And my point in reaching out to Melinda is that we have been exceptionally pleased with the relationship we've had with SAPD in these times of crisis recently, when the staff member was assaulted, and that was a really dangerous situation. The guest who assaulted her was still in the building. She was very injured. Guests were trying to intervene to put a stop to the situation. Officer Gates, I believe it was there in under 2 minutes. Put an end to that situation, and they were able to apprehend the guest outside the building. When we had to call for the unruly guest in the lobby, I just had one female staff member in there at the time. Again, the police were there very quickly, were able to serve with a no trespass order. That's been really, really heartening for us to know that, yes, I'd like to have 4 staff members on at all times, but knowing that if something happens and a staff member or a guest is in danger, that the St. Albans Police will respond that quickly and efficiently. As a director in charge of the safety of that staff and our guests, that's been really, really incredible. And the tact that we've seen is another thing I really want to know. Just today, and I didn't catch the officer's name, they were looking to speak with somebody and asked that they expected he might come to us. They stopped in and said, hey, if this person shows up, would you be willing to give us a call? Person showed up and asked about coming into shelter. So we were filling out that paperwork, and we want to be team players with SAPD, so we did call and say, hey, this guy is here if you still want to talk to him. The responding officer came in, let us finish that paperwork so that we could get him on the wait list for our shelter. Then asked if they could speak with him. We found them an empty office. No handcuffs had to be used, nobody was dragged away, there was no yelling. That person, I believe, has a court date for whatever they were looking for, and he's also on the wait list for a shelter bed. He's not in jail unnecessarily tonight. We expect, with how hard it is to hire, that we're going to need the help of SAPD. We are trying to take some steps to make that less of a reliant thing. We are going to contract with a security firm, kind of like the folks who do concert and event security, for our problem hours, which are significantly 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. or so, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, occasionally Sunday. So we'll have a security presence on site, kind of out of the main shelter. I don't want our guests to feel like we're looking for trouble. I think it's important to note that 99 out of 100 guests that we have are really fantastic. They're with us for a long time. They don't cause problems for the most part. And even the ones who have caused problems, we know that there are other things going on. These are people that we've had good relationships with, but when their substances and mental health conditions flaring up, it causes them to be unsafe. So we think that added security will be a benefit, but I was talking with the chief ahead of time that after the events where a staff member was hurt, we immediately changed our policy that no single staff member can be tasked with removing somebody from shelter. And that means that if we're not fully staffed, that we're gonna call over there and we're gonna say, hey, can you send someone over to make sure this situation doesn't get out of hand? It's just, it's been really nice in such a full of crisis couple of weeks that we've had, to know that when things are bad, that SAPD has really had our backs. They've really responded well, and we've appreciated the tact with which they greet our guests. Whether it's a calm situation or a tense situation, we've always really loved having the mental health professionals embedded there. Sam's fantastic, and they do tend to take efforts to make sure that mental health is coming. That's been a fantastic program. I hope that we just see more and more of that in the future, not just with SAPD, but with other departments in the area too. I don't want you guys to think that it's all a constant crisis over there in general. I came in this morning and I was really relieved that the biggest problem over the last 3 days when I've been out was an argument over who was going to do dishes. That's generally what it's like over there, and it makes me really happy when I come in for that. But in this line of work, things do get out of hand. It's been super great, and I do just want to add a thanks to John and his staff who have been dealing with this guest who committed the assault, and your communication, your staff's communication with us has been really helpful. For those of us not very experienced with it, to have a direct line of communication to say things like, hey, where's this person, what's going on, and to get quick responses and to get great communication. That's been really helpful too. So that was where this started, was I wanted to, I reached out to Melinda, how do we let SAPD know, A, how much we appreciate what you do and the way you do it, and B, we still need you.
Appreciate it.
So, any questions about what we do or any of the things that I just mentioned?
Winnie has a question on
Right.
there about your mission.
Yeah, so our mission, we were happy to keep all of that the same to our transition, but our mission is to empower people who are experiencing homelessness in our area to access safe housing and support. That's our bottom line, is that somebody comes to us unsure of where they're going to live. We want to give them the support, the tools, and the immediate shelter, that emergency, knowing where you're going to stay tonight, so that they can take the steps needed to obtain safe, stable, permanent housing. Obviously, it turns into a whole lot of other roles once the folks are there, but overall our hope is that we can get you under a roof so you know where you're going to stay. We can give you some support and some tools so that you can take the steps to finding more permanent housing.
And then I feel like I've heard some weird rumors about whether or not the residents have to have a criminal background, and I just felt like this was a good forum to maybe ask that question, and if that's not true, clarify it.
So that's a really important question. There was a point, actually coinciding with us as a family shelter, kind of oddly enough, where we did have a grant with the Vermont Department of Corrections, and a certain number of beds had to be held for those being released from furlough or facility.
Okay.
We no longer have that grant, so we don't make any, it's just first come, first serve for us. Right now, while we're still waiting for that construction to single rooms, which should be starting sometime later or early in 23. Right now it is, I don't know if I mentioned it, we're a congregate shelter, so 3 or 4 folks to a room. That's not always the best system. We take 4 people in crisis, cram them in together and hope for the best. It has worked to get as many people as we can off the street, but we will be converting to single bedrooms. Until that point, we do still have to separate based on gender identity. But other than that, it's just first come, first serve. But as recently as a couple of years ago, there were times where somebody called and the only bed I had available was for somebody involved with the Department of Corrections, but that is no longer the case.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
There's another question out there, but
Yeah,
I don't understand it.
I think it might be a community question because iPhone 3 is not clearly identified. So I'm not sure who you are, but if we can, well, Ben, I don't know if you're staying for the whole time, so we'll address it because
I can stay as long as y'all
yeah,
want to.
well, I certainly don't want to hold you up if you were here for a certain reason, so I think we can entertain this question now, which is unique. Normally I would wait until the end to take questions from the public, but this is a special circumstance. So I'm not completely sure that I understand the question, but it seems like
If it's okay, I'll treat it as how can people who are struggling get help.
that's perfect.
Because,
Thank you.
and please hop on and correct if I'm way off base there, but I did mention that we no longer are hosting families in shelter, and that's a very common question is, well, what if I've got a kid and nowhere to go? We are fortunate to have Chris's program here, and if people are survivors, a family has a member who's a survivor of some domestic or sexual violence, if there's space, they may be able to access Voices Against Violence, which is super helpful. And always has been. That's not a new relationship for us. We've really counted Voices as a partner for longer than I've been with Samaritan House. But they're an important resource for families. There is some help offered, and a lot of you hear about the motels through Economic Services Division. And they've made an improvement to that motel program from years past to their adverse weather exemptions. It used to be a day-by-day thing. If you were experiencing homelessness, wanted to try to get into a motel room, if the weather was a certain condition that day, a certain temperature and a certain chance of precipitation, you could call your local office, hope that you got a motel room. Now beginning, those conditions are still in effect already for the next month, but beginning December 15th till I think it's March, it's a blanket exemption. So it's a common sense approach to say it is cold in January in Vermont. We don't need to go out and look at the thermometer for that.
Right.
So Economic Services offers a ton of help. Samaritan House does still offer help to people who are not our guests, and very frequently the people you'll see in our lobby in the day are folks who've been removed from Tim's House shelter recently. They're still welcome to come in and speak with a housing advocate about their potential resources and options. They can come in and take a shower, do a load of laundry, or just get inside. Franklin County's really lucky to have a lot of great service providers. You've got Community Action with some incredible people and expertise over there. Our restorative justice program is excellent in this area. We have Voices, we have Spectrum for younger folks. There are a lot of resources in our area, but at the same time, it's definitely not enough. We would like to see some more, but there are options for people who are looking for help in this area.
And I think, and I see that the person in the public did this, and I'll move on from after this because I have a similar question. The other concern that I have heard, both professionally and personally, is that folks who actually reside who have lived in St. Albans for a long time, who may be in crisis or have chosen to continue to stay in St. Albans, even if that situation is continuing for them, are no longer able to access the resources because we're pulling from a large amount of other communities that don't have the same resources that we do. And I don't know if that was the intent of this question, but that's my question, and we'll leave it at that. But
yeah, there has been some of people coming both to Vermont, like as the pandemic started, and specifically to Franklin County, because we do have a lot of those great service providers that I've mentioned. I don't think the issue of maybe there's not enough resources to go around is due to folks from other communities coming here. I think it's due to the fact that the pandemic showed how many folks already in this community desperately needed help. What we found at the start of COVID and all throughout was that folks who had been just getting by maybe couch surfing for years before then, they were no longer welcome to do that because it wasn't safe in this environment. I think that what's been highlighted the last couple of years is that the people who need the help are seeing that some is available and they're coming out for it, and it's more than we're ready for. A lot of people do not have the means to try to access support and to try to access housing, especially rental housing in St. Albans. It's hard for anybody, any of us, to afford to live right now. And for people who are not making enough money or not making any money or battling significant substance and mental health issues, there's a lot of help needed.
okay, thank you, Ben. And I'm going to close it at that. And I think that Ben, I appreciate you coming. Oh, sorry. Did the board have Let me just move right along. Does the board have any additional questions or comments for Ben? Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. We're gonna leave it at that, but it sounds like maybe someone wants to make a connection with you, Ben. So, certainly, Ben, I don't know what the best way is to reach you, if it's via email, phone.
Yeah, both my email and phone are available through cvoeo.org.
Okay.
If you go to the programs tab, I'm listed there. We're also open 8 to 4:30 Monday to Friday. We're right on Kingman Street, and it's just open drop-in, whether somebody wants to chat or if they need some support, want to take a shower, do a little laundry, talk to a housing case manager, or talk to me. We're there 8 to 4:30 Monday to Friday, and you can find my contact info at cvoeo.org.
Thank you so much, Ben. And I know we went a little out of scope for our meeting, but I think, we've talked a lot at this group about how law enforcement interfaces with the community and how, we can have different systemic supports in place so that it doesn't all fall at SAPD's door. This is one of those great systems. And so appreciate you coming and sharing and being open. And if it's okay with everybody, I'll move on unless anyone has anything else from the board for Ben. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
John, thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to come anytime.
See you later.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Ben, so much. Okay. Moving along. Yes, okay, so the next on our agenda is, we are a little bit behind, so I may try to push us through a little bit to try to keep us on task, but
You just want to sit next to me.
I wondered what was happening, I was like, did we?
Chris and I go with it.
Yeah,
Musical chairs.
I mean, that's how we add adventure to anything. So I've updated on recent SAPD events and future ones, and I want to clarify, I meant like public events, and I should have put that in the agenda more clearly. This, you just recently had, I'm not gonna say right, fill a trunk, stuff a trunk. You've got another one coming up, and I know that there are other activities in between. So I just thought this was a great opportunity to end the year to talk about, what's coming up recently, what we can look forward to in January, because we won't meet again until then.
So I just said quick, since August 1st, we've done 26 events that we've done since August 1st. That will conclude on December 31st. So most recent ones we did were the trunk or treat, the stuff a trunk for the turkeys for Martha's. What is coming up, we're going to be stuffing a cruiser with toys. That's coming December 14th. We're going to be parking at 2 locations in the town and a location in the city yet to be determined. The idea that people will bring us toys, we'll get them out. So Operation Happiness. We're also working Operation Happiness like we do every year. We're going to do a holiday light tour, which we stream live, which we did it last year and the year before, 2 years ago. We've done it now, this will be the third, and it's incredible. We get people from England, Australia that log in and watch us do this thing, and people love it. It's a good event. I usually ride passenger, Lieutenant Weatherly drives, and people text us where they want us to go, or they call dispatch and try to hit the houses that call us. We can't hit them all, we do as many as we can. We're going to be escorting Santa for the tree lighting this next, actually a few nights from now, Saturday. We'll do the running of the bells is coming up. The tractor parade, of course, is coming up, and last night. But those are just a few things we have in the next 5 weeks. So
Nice.
this is our busiest time of year for the type of stuff the city does and our own stuff we throw in between. But again, we're at 26 events in the last 6 months. The city's got involved in it.
And it's the next agenda item, so I don't want to spill the beans, but when we went over the data, one of the things that I saw as I revisited all after being in data entry mode was sort of the opportunities to connect, right? So I think it's really important that if you're wanting to connect with SAPD, they are going to be at these events, and are people able to approach you
Absolutely.
during these events?
Like all these 26, that's what they're designed for, right? We're out there,
Okay.
we're doing these. The best way to see where we're going to be for any of these events is on our Facebook page. But that's the whole idea of them, is to have us out there and approachable, like the trunk or treating, whatever we're doing. We're getting invited to a lot of these from other agencies. The Autism Care Partners, for example, they asked us to be there, we were there, and those are just good events that we're seeing a different, people that wouldn't normally see under circumstances that they approached us. A lot of times we get called to some houses where we're dealing with people with autism and such, and this was a great place for us to go. and just be there so they could approach us on their own terms. It's just like the day camp that they had for Camp Rainbow.
Rainbow.
We were there for 2 days in a row for both the kids and the adults. That was awesome. Got to interact, and those are things that are just great. But no, the whole idea is for us to be there for people just to interact with us on their terms. Works out good.
Great.
I went to trunk or treat with my son, and I couldn't stay long because he was crazy. But it was really, and we got there like maybe 15 minutes after it started, and you said you had been swarmed before.
Yes.
And then as we were leaving, like there was many people coming. So do you have a sense of how many kids?
Yeah, we had roughly 250 bags of candy pre-made, and we went through those in the first 45 minutes roughly.
Wow.
And we estimate at the end we probably had 400 come through ours.
Wow,
So
yeah.
yeah, it worked out really well, and we had about 6 different agencies
Yeah,
represented. So
and it was fun. I think. I mean, my son couldn't really see because he got this weird costume, but he was he loves fire trucks, so he was particularly excited to see the fire truck, and he made a joke about the Ambulance people because he was dressed as Death. He was like, "I'm coming for you," and I was like, "Oh, cool, great." But yeah, so I think that that was, and people were driving. Like I drove to it, right? Like people were driving to it. It wasn't just kids who were walking. So. Are there other agencies that you think will participate in the future, or do you think that's...
yeah, I think that so this year we had us, AmCare, State Police, Border Patrol, and National Guard. Next year, hopefully, Franklin County Sheriffs will jump in. They had done kind of their own that they had pre-planned too, so just timing wasn't there. But we would like to get them, and maybe Swamp P will come up. I mean, they did one their own thing on there as well. It's hard. I mean, Halloween is one night, right? So everybody wants to do a night because they already have the kids dressed up. But maybe we'll do something else. I mean. We can grow some of the other events, kind of what we're thinking. The Packer Cruiser, we might be able to get other agencies involved in that next year if we think about it more ahead of time, with both the turkeys and with the toys. Because I think that the toy one of this would be our pilot to try it. If it goes really well, then maybe we can do it in multiple areas, multiple towns around here.
And you might have said this, did that partner with Operation Happiness, which I know is, yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions on events? For Chief, anything that you'd like to see in the future that we can offer him as a suggestion from the board? Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for continuing to do it, because how many turkeys did you end up doing? Like 15?
That was close to 50. It was 44 at like 4
50,
o'clock that
yeah.
afternoon. And then we got some stragglers that came in late that night, like late, and then the next day we had a couple more show up, so
Yeah.
around 50.
Excellent. Okay. So thank you for that, and I think I'm thinking about maybe keeping that as a standing agenda item because it seems like there's enough events and we're only meeting every other month or 6 times a year now. So I think it's good to keep it there. And certainly, if folks on the board or folks in the community wanted to send us suggestions that we can pass along, we'd love to hear what else we can be doing, which events could be expanded, and if there are different things you're looking for.
Yeah, we'll take ideas for events. I mean, we're looking for stuff to particularly if we can raise money for Martha's or something like that's one of our biggest partnerships we have is with Martha's Kitchen. We are there a lot helping out with different things, and one of the things we'd like to help them more with is raising money or food that they can use, and anything we can do there would be great.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, Winnie, I see that, and I didn't have the wherewithal to type at the same time, so I don't know if we can, we'll take a pause maybe after this, and I'll see if I can drop that information into the chat. He did say it, and it is posted, so hopefully we can get that in there, but thank you for the suggestion, Winnie. Okay, so moving on, and this is kind of unfortunate that I can't share my screen, and Google has some weird holding periods, so they won't let me reset my password to be able to share it, at least in the room. So I am going to articulate it very clearly, even though you won't be able to see my PowerPoint. And I will just say everything that's on it, like I'm reading from it. And my plan was to take this PowerPoint, and then before we release it into the email nexus, it's not as though I'm trying to hoard it, I just think it's probably good for City Council to see it, and then we can release it more broadly, and hopefully it's something that they would release on their website, and we can have good discussion about it at City Council. So I'm thinking realistically, it would go to the January city council. One, for my own personal schedule, but two, I just think the timing of our meeting and the timing of theirs makes it super tricky. So can I ask you to type that in the chat for me, and then I'll use my laptop over here. So just to set the stage, I brought this earlier in the spring. We sent out a survey at the very end of 2021, and I know this has taken a really long time, but if you've ever worked with CMS, sometimes surveys just take a really long time. So we did it all on paper. We mailed it out to every address in the city. We collected all of that information and we processed it into a survey. There were some technical challenges, so I was only able to produce half the data last time. Well, now we have the complete data here. You can't see it, but I will walk through it, and you may remember it from the previous iteration of this. And I just need to close or do something different here. Okay. So just as a reminder, our methodology, I did just kind of talk through it. All the possible options that we look like. We did select the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, you're good. We did do the mailed survey was what we decided, but other options were a survey monkey, in-person interviews and polls, and a mailed QR code. We did try the in-person interviews and polls, and it was a lot more challenging than you would think, and it was also really freezing cold during voting season, so it was a little trickier. And mailed seemed like the best way to allow the person to choose whether or not they wanted to engage versus knocking on doors. So we did land on mailed. I think at the end we'll talk about if that's what we would want to do next time. My thought is that this is either an every 2 or 3 year survey. It doesn't make sense for it to be annually. We can't turn it around fast enough. And real change takes 2 to 3 years, right, if we want it to be sustainable. But we can talk about that more in a second. The opportunities that we identified, and we ended out with 413 valid surveys that were returned. We had a couple of envelopes that had 2 in them, and then we had some that ended up being blank. So even though there were 410 envelopes, as Kristen counted it, we ended up with a few more surveys. Our opportunities that we identified from the last one was ensuring that there was a deadline for return. John brought that up the day after we sent out the surveys, but it's absolutely right, and that was a miss, so next time we will make sure that there's a clear deadline for return. A lot of people, we asked the question, do you wish to be contacted by the Police Advisory Board? A lot of people said yes. However, we didn't leave room for them to actually write their contact information. So in some cases, they wrote it on the envelope or they left me a note on the back and I was able to figure it out. In others, unfortunately, we weren't able to reach back out to them. So I apologize to the general public who looked for contact, but we may still reach out to you as things evolve. We really felt like we needed to create an input as you go system. As much fun as manually entering 413 surveys was, it took a lot of time when you have a full-time job, and I think they were probably coming in trickles that we could have put them into the system as we went. And the sub-questions, when we get to the data results, we'll talk a lot about this, but the sub-questions, and so that was like question 2 might be, do you know how to file a complaint or a grievance with SAPD? And then it had a sub-question, do you think that would be taken seriously? And we had a lot of NAs, as in no answers on those. And I think it's because it's a survey error that people just skipped over it. So that's an opportunity for us for the next one, is to just get rid of sub-questions and make everything a standalone question. So the very first question on the survey, would you call the St. Albans Police Department if you were in an unsafe situation or witnessing one? So the grand total that we had, hold on. Sorry. That did not go as expected because I think it does it. Okay, as is the story of my day, I knew when there was pancake batter all over my floor when I woke up this morning that it was just going to be a day that wasn't going to go my way. So bear with me please, because while the slideshow has lovely pictures, the numbers didn't translate, so I have their source of truth. Okay. And I shared this last time, but we created basically a glorified spreadsheet and then created pivot tables and charts. So there was nothing spectacularly fancy about this set up, but it got the job done, and it gave us, the answers that we were looking for. So here's the data. The grand total of people who responded to this question was 412 answered the question, would you call the SAPD if you were in an unsafe situation or witnessing one? 8 people said no, 8 people had literally wrote, I don't know, and I qualified that as a non-answer because that's where it fit. 17 people said no, they would not call SAPD if they were in an unsafe situation or witnessing one, and 387 people said yes. So the odds were overwhelming that people felt like they wanted to make that phone call if folks were unsafe. However, the challenge is that some people had qualifications, right? So when you read, there's not a great way to qualify qualifications in a survey like this when you're looking at raw data. We got a lot of, it depends what the situation is. So yes, mostly I would. A few people who said yes, I would for myself. I don't know if I'd make that choice for others. It depends if it's a mental health related situation. We may or may not, and not many, but some, so it's worth noting if the individual was a member of, or was a BIPOC member of our community, we may not make that phone call for them. I did not get any that I clearly identified themselves as a member of the BIPOC community who said that they would feel unsafe. So, it's hard when people answer the question one way, but then give you that qualification, so you kind of have to go with their answer. But it's just important to note, right, that people have questions and there may be some opportunity. And I think we've had those discussions here. Last time we talked about the race data. Chief did a great job of diving into that and giving us some reasonable answers to those questions, and we'll just continue to do that as we move forward. Okay. The next question. Are you aware of how to provide feedback or file grievances with SAPD? And this was an interesting one because we ended out with 19 NAs, so no answers, 196 no's, and 196 yeses. And so, and then the next question really kind of tells that story further. So half of our respondents knew it and understood it, and the other half didn't. And a few of them suggested that may be something that we can work on, is making sure that people are more clear about how to file a grievance with SAPD. A concern, and I would even go so far as to say it could be a compliment too, right? Like there's lots of ways that you can set up feedback loops that you're getting positive and negative. So it was just an interesting kind of set of answers as I worked through the data one more time in preparation for today, that's the way that it sugared out. But then the next question is, do you believe your concern is taken seriously or shared with elected officials in any capacity? Now, a lot of people answered, no, I don't know how to do it, but yes, I believe it will go. But the overall answers to that question, and some people totally didn't address it at all in their surveys, so we only ended up with 405 answers to that one, but that's that sub-question thing, right, where people just didn't answer it. And in fact, there was 136 that I could honestly qualify as NAs. There were 59 no's and 210 yeses. So when I looked at that data as a whole, what it really told me is we have an opportunity maybe with the grievance process and helping people understand the chain of command, how it works, where it goes. And I know we talk about the data here publicly. It may be something that we want to highlight, since we're doing Zoom, like we put it up on the screen so people can see it, right? I know you always report it. And I know it's a website, is that right? And people can also call?
Yes, they can. You mean to make a complaint?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can call, you can stop in, you can
Okay.
go to City Hall. I don't know exactly how else to do it, like we talked about, but yes, there's numerous ways.
Yeah, online forms is the only thing that comes to mind.
Yep, they're there too.
There is an online form there?
That's on City Hall website.
Oh, it's on the City Hall website. Is it on the SAPD?
It is not, well, so their SAPD website is through the City Hall website.
Gotcha, okay. So there's that opportunity. Yeah, I don't really know how else to do it either. If there's an online form that
I
sometimes,
mean, quite honestly, I would say that in my time here, most complaints come in walk-in or phone call. And
Okay.
Then we make arrangements to get the form, and if they want to do it orally, verbally.
and is there something that mandates that you call it complaints or grievances? Do you have that kind of rule?
That's just how we refer to it, so we do, but no, I don't, we'll take any,
Okay,
I don't know how you would term it, but anytime
Yeah.
somebody makes a complaint, that's how we term it, but,
Yeah.
no matter how minor it is, like we talked about, to the
Yeah.
most egregious thing you can think of, it all gets a case and an investigation, but a complaint is how we term it, just so for
right,
terminology, so I know we had a complaint, it's somebody for speeding all the way through the worst thing you can think of.
right. I was thinking like calling it feedback, right?
Yeah.
In healthcare, we had an obligation to call it a complaint or
Yeah.
grievance, because that's governed by law. But I
No,
wasn't
there's
sure if you
nothing.
had the same thing, and maybe that offers the opportunity for people to give
Yeah.
positive feedback.
We do get those occasionally too, and we have a
Okay.
system to keep track of those as well, but they are certainly not as many of those as there are.
Yeah, and there never is, right? I don't care what industry you're in,
That's
it's,
right.
that's true. So it may be something, and we can talk about this in our next agenda item, that maybe there isn't a better way to do it, but maybe there is an opportunity, even if you just blast it on your Facebook. I think that Facebook page is pretty strong and robust, I see a lot of posts there. But it was just an interesting outcome, and I definitely, it made me think, do we have an opportunity just to really spend time, and I know we did it at the very beginning, but I think it might be worth revisiting what the life cycle of a complaint or a grievance is, and like really just focus on it as an agenda item. Because I think that's, we can say it, and then we can post it, and then people still have to do it, but at least it kind of addresses what people thought was kind of a gap from our community. Okay. Do you feel connected to law enforcement in your community? And this was a question that we talked about because a lot of the answers that we got were, no, should I? I don't ever get in trouble, so I don't really feel like I'm connected to them, but I'm okay with that. And then we got the other side too, like I'd love to see police officers patrolling on foot and be approachable and friendly, so it's a mix for sure. But we got 409 countable responses on that question, and we got 14 no's and 0 NAs, so everybody felt comfortable answering this question. I'll just point that out. 14 no's, 131, no, I'm saying it wrong, I'm sorry. Sometimes I hate data, and this is one of those moments. 14 NAs, we did have NAs, I knew that was wrong. 131 no's, 264 yeses. So a little bit more evenly spread than some of our other questions, but like I said, a lot of those, are you feeling connected? People were like, no, should I? But we did get quite a few, I've just moved to the area, how do I connect with law enforcement? What are the events, that's what we talked about, what are the events that I can go to where I can interact with them? And things like trunk or treat, I think, are like that perfect example, right? You go there. Quite a few people wondered if you were going to do an open house on the new.
We have talked about that.
On the new place, and I think because I think people are excited, they want to see it, right? But that might be another thing, where they're looking for to be invited to interact. But it was interesting that it was kind of there were more answers than I was expecting based on the other answers that we received. And then there were some people who answered yes and then just wrote, we love SAPD, which is great too. So it was a mix for sure. There was a lot of sidebar comments on, and there came a point, I remember, when I was like, woohoo, they didn't give any comments because I can just answer the questions. And then some people wrote like add an extra paper to the response. So you had to paraphrase those a little bit, but so I don't know as much that there's an opportunity to do things differently there, as much as maybe just advertise more what is happening. And one of the things I've learned recently, probably more from my professional work, is just that we take for granted that everybody has access to the internet and Facebook, but there's still a large group of people who don't. And so there may be alternative ways that we can advertise. Any questions? That was the data in its entirety. Any questions on that?
Thank you, that's a lot of work.
It was a little bit more than I thought it was going to be, but yes. Yes.
Thank you for all that.
But you know what was nice about it, honestly, and we would lose it if we went to one of these other, is that I got to see it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Because I definitely got some nasty grams in there, do not get me wrong. There were some really impolite things directed at the board, some things directed at PD, but there was more better and meaningful feedback than there was not, and it was good to be able to pick up the trends that you can't see in just the answers. So it was good to be able to read all of that. So the comment trends haven't really changed since the last time I presented this. Don't turn St. Albans into Burlington, don't defund the police, and I, kind of reminded the group last time, and I'll do it again. I don't know what kind of authority folks think we have, but we can't actually defund the police in St. Albans City. But more importantly, I think the work that we did over the last year was actually to get more funding for different positions to support SAPD. So that's not in our mission statement that we read at the beginning, and that's not really what we're here to do. Better training and responsiveness to domestic violence for officers. We mentioned that one before, and I think we've done some things, or we're planning to do some things.
It's happening, yeah.
Okay.
We just did a training, didn't we? Not too long ago, but they're all going.
Speeding was a fan favorite. Everybody's street is like a race car place, I guess. And we're still doing some speed monitoring in the,
Everywhere.
right, yeah.
It's had 2 or 3 in the last couple of days come in. It's constant.
And since the last time we talked about this, I learned that some of them have cameras. so sometimes this lead-footed gal has to remember. Yeah, it happens. Been a long history. Unaware of complaint process, that was one that I added just based on re-reviewing them and sort of seeing that trend sugar out. Racial bias amongst officers, we talked about that. And there was one really great, it was like a survey from the second group, and it actually ends up being someone who I would consider a friend in the community who wrote this, but just wondering how we better highlight the training that is happening, the frequency that is happening, not only for SAPD, but also for City Council and for the other committees. And I know the city went through some mandatory training, but I don't know where they landed, and that's a good question for Dominic. And is that still something that's ongoing for
The city as a whole?
no,
PD.
UP,
Yeah, so we have mandatory training
Yeah.
to maintain your certification. Then we squeeze in everything we can outside of mandatory training. We keep track of every bit of training our officers do. We have a running log, and we have to hand it in by the end of December. So
And there is
for us, it's easy to produce every piece of training we do.
right.
And you're right, the city is also looking at additional training for every city employee. They're constantly looking for stuff, but we go way above and beyond our required training, but still not enough. It's nowhere near enough.
Right. And it does highlight, I think, specifically bias training. That's part of what you do, and I think probably part of the domestic violence piece too, right? And then a lot of thank you for your service to the SAPD. So it's important to mention that of those positives that we talked about, would you call, probably 50% of them had a thank you message in them. And then past leadership led to mistrust, and we sort of knew when we did this that we were still paying for the sins maybe of previous events. And some people brought up specific cases, and when I Googled them, they were like from the 70s, and you really gotta let that go. But so, I think the survey did what we wanted it to do. A lot of people thanked us for sending it, for giving them that opportunity on whatever side of the fence they were on to provide feedback and weigh in. And so, I think it gave us, like I said, a couple of places where it's low-hanging fruit, for lack of a better term, and might be opportunities to improve. And then I think we do the survey again in 2024. How does everybody?
I would say 2 years is decent.
Yeah. I can't do this every year. No, but I mean really truly it's a general surveying every year oftentimes does not. Surveying with greater frequency doesn't lead to better outcomes. Any thoughts, questions? Anybody on screen? John, Winnie?
It just makes me think from a data perspective, part of the we've talked about this internally, is like the piece that you're missing that's highlighted is just celebrating what you're doing. Because people are filling in the narrative or the gaps of what they assume or what they don't know. And so the more, even as a board, that we can highlight some of these things in different ways, I think will help turn the curve on some of the perception or the data points that people perceive out there.
I appreciate that. I mean, we're not in business to get acknowledgement for the good things, but that is, because that's not what happens, but,
Yeah.
so the only way we get any of that, just by keep doing these things, you know, it is what it is.
And I'm glad you said that because actually I forgot, one of the folks really wondered if the committee, so we would be willing to do a newsletter, right? And I don't actually think it's a bad idea because I think, you know, we don't, in this new world order of public meetings, we don't always have a ton of public attendance, but I think we've done a lot. And, you know, it's having people watch the videos, and I know part of that is public service, but the other hand, if there was a way to communicate what we're doing beyond having someone, you know, read through pages of minutes that really just highlighted the good things and actually maybe was a little independent of SAPD might be another avenue to explore. I don't know if any other groups do that. Do you know, do any of you?
I don't know of any groups that do that.
I think that's where we could highlight, though, here are all the
Yes.
events,
Yes.
here's the grievance and appeal process,
Right.
and highlight some of these things that we're trying to shift.
And if we can throw it into a water bill, that makes it, you know, then we don't have to pay for,
Instead of the mayor's
we
letter.
don't have to pay
Or-
for, right? I mean, yeah, you know. But it's just something that I think we can certainly do
We'll
a
have
digital.
to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Format.
we're blending into the next agenda item, but that was just one of the things. Anything else on this
Yeah.
one?
Thank you.
So I will bring this to January, and then hopefully we will publish it, and then I will send it out. Send it out broadly. I just always have anxiety about things getting out before you've had a chance to review it with city council, who in effect is our boss, right? So, you know, we have an obligation to do that. Okay, well, thank you, and thank you for bearing with me for the technology. And John has a comment, sorry. Yeah, John says that I think if we survey again, you can ask about awareness, efficacy of newer highlighted programs or policies. And that's where something like that newsletter, you know, is a way to say, hey, we put this in front of you so you know what's going on. Was that fitting the puzzle pieces together? Linking it together? Okay, perfect. I was hoping so. Okay, excellent. So if there's no further discussion on the survey itself, I will go to the 2023 committee focus, and I think we just highlighted on one thing about how we highlight the good work that's happening and highlight the grievance process, and he's gonna do all of it tonight. So that's one area, but I know last year our focus was on getting approved for the new mental health embedded crisis worker. Any movement on that?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask.
Oh, sorry.
I was gonna bring
I
it up.
can take it back.
I'm just kidding. No. So we had a discussion again today, just to see where MCSS is at. No, there's no movement. They have nobody in pipeline. The city leadership is pushing hard to get somebody as well, because the money's been allocated now for
Yeah.
July. We can't pull somebody out in there, bottom line. And you know, we've interviewed a handful, and none of them would have been a good fit. And that's where we're at. So we have made changes. Sam is now been cleared to come in on nights and weekends. So that has given us some coverage on hours where she wasn't working prior. That was a big shift. We had to sell that to NCSS. We are paying the bill. So it's not cost him, and she's going to do the work. So that's helping. That's going to help. We just started that.
Hours or?
Well, on top of our normal hours.
Wow.
As an overtime basis. So we just got that approval 3 weeks ago maybe. So that's gonna help alleviate some of the need, but bottom line is we don't have anybody.
I know.
Yeah.
She's willing to do it,
Like us.
yeah, but we just don't have anybody else.
Yeah,
So,
no, that makes sense.
um,
And I know we said before, when we talked about that it's far more important to take the time and
Yes.
find the right fit, right?
You look at the state positions, they've lost 4 of the ones they hired for barracks already. So
Yeah, people aren't jumping into the mental health field.
And the ones that did jump in, some did stay, so. Yeah, it's more important for us, right, to find that right person. We need to find Sam or Nick, that's what we need to find, so.
I wonder if it's worth exploring in this kind of conversation that I have had with folks, if like, could we build a bench of like 2 people that are just willing to do some subbing, and like key shifts that you're looking for? Because, I mean, like I said, resumes are not coming in, and a lot of, particularly with master level positions right now.
And those don't have to be master level, just so you're
So,
clear.
okay, so I just wonder if we could not shoot for the full-time, but
Right.
like, let's start.
We'll do
Do
anything,
anything,
we'll do
yeah.
pretty, whatever,
Yeah.
we'll take somebody that has, so the skill level, that's the other interesting thing, right? So Sam is a master's level,
Mhm.
Nick is not.
Right.
We don't need a master level, we are looking for the person
Yeah.
with a set of skills that fits the position we need. And that position we need doesn't need to be master level as well, just
Yeah.
like it has some psychology background, training, and can talk to people. That's what we need.
Yeah.
We'll get the training they need additional on top of that, but we're not picky about the education, because Nick has proven that you don't need a master's level to be highly successful.
Are you good with me bringing that internally? Okay.
Yeah. And Tony's well aware of what we're looking for, education-wise, we're not, it's more on NTSS to pick the person, we just want the fit. They pick the person they think will do the job, we don't need the fit, so.
I also know that we've had some leadership shifts. There's leadership
Yes.
shifts, there's opportunities to
We-
explore
Yeah.
things differently.
Yeah.
What other things in 2023, Chief, would you be looking for support with, and committee members, what things are you feeling like we should focus on?
So from my perspective, I mean, like I've talked to you before, this has come a long way since, and I do find it very helpful from my position, very beneficial to the PD. Moving forward, the new position with NCSS is huge. What's huge is huge, it's still gonna be huge to get it working. But now moving forward, I mean, I just need help getting, like what you hit on already, getting these events out there, because we wanna see different people come to them. We wanna see, there's still a large part of the population we've never seen. We still don't see, so we need to see more people out there, that's all. I mean, I don't see anything that the PD is in dire need of right now that we're not already getting, or have in the works. That we just don't, we're doing all right. We have some big things that may potentially be coming up with the PD that we're not ready to talk about yet, because they're in the works, and if some of those happen, then we'll be having more discussions.
Okay. And I'll be interested to see what city council says in January, because they may have a different agenda for us that I don't even know about yet, which is entirely possible. And I know the one thing, and I've touched on it before, and I don't think we're alone as a city, I don't think we're alone as a city group, is that we do have a belonging, equity, and inclusion group. They did just pass some very important, legislature's the wrong word, but is it a proclamation? Oh, I'm getting this all wrong. I'm sorry, my BEI friends. But they did just get something passed through city council talking about inclusion, a document, and
It's probably a declaration.
declaration, thank you. Oh my God. Whew, it's 2 days before Thanksgiving, it's almost over. So I know it doesn't make sense maybe to embed folks, but I would love to be able to reach out to them to say, what are you hearing through your work? What are you looking for? Because I think we have them and they're a resource, and I want to be able to use, and there are some very talented and very passionate folks on that group, and so that's kind of my thought for 2023. And then I'll read what, I think, is that what John posted in a second. Thoughts on that? I know we've gone back and forth.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea too.
Okay. And then, John, yes, the roadmap and identify another area. So John wrote, we should look at the roadmap and identify another area where we can see a tangible achievement. I don't have one in mind at the moment, but that is something I will look over for January. Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, John, because it's been a minute, I think, since we looked at the whole roadmap document. Yeah, so we have the mission, and I think, we can fit some of the things that we've already done into those categories, and part of the training that you did, Danielle highlighted that, so it may be good, if I say dashboard, I'm gonna sound like the nerdiest of nerds, but it may just be a way for us to look at the data and align it up with those things in a dashboard. Oh, there must be another word. A format that's easy, that's top level for the community and for the group to see, and I think that would be a good move for 2023. And I'm willing to kind of prep that and get folks' feedback on that.
If it makes you feel better, say dashboard at least twice a day.
I know, I say it all the time. I had one physician tell me once, do you have a dashboard that's actually gonna do surgery? I was like, I might, challenge accepted. Okay, so it seems like we've got some good work to prep for 2023. Any other thoughts on that before we move to public comment? Okay, so I open the floor for public comment. I don't think there's any public on the call.
Public here?
I'm just listening.
Okay. All right, well, I wish everybody a happy and healthy Thanksgiving, and I will look for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Please have a happy and safe holiday, everybody, and thank you, and we'll see you in January.